I never thought the day would come when my wife would sit me down at the kitchen table, look me straight in the eye, and say the words that shook my world, asterisk, I think I still love my ex. Asterisk. For a moment, I just stared at her, trying to understand if this was some kind of cruel joke or a test. But she wasn't joking. Her hands trembled as she clutched her coffee mug, her voice low but steady. We had been married for 6 years. We built a life together, trips, laughter, late-night talks about our dreams. I thought we were unshakable. But now, all of that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I wanted to shout, to ask her how she could throw everything away. Instead, I stayed calm. Too calm, maybe. I leaned back in my chair, my mind already racing. If she was expecting me to break down or beg, she was about to see a side of me she never imagined. Because I had my own secret, one that would change everything. She looked at me, waiting for an explosion. Maybe she thought I'd slam my fists on the table or storm out of the house. But I didn't. I just nodded slowly, which seemed to unsettle her even more. I don't want to hurt you, she whispered, her eyes glassy. But my feelings for him never completely went away. I thought I could bury them, but now, they're back. I could hear the guilt in her voice, but also something else, longing. I took a deep breath. Inside, my chest was on fire, but I refused to let her see me break. So, let me get this straight, I said quietly. You've been married to me all this time, while still holding on to him in your heart. She looked down, ashamed, and nodded. That's when I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give out of happiness, but the kind that comes when you realize you're about to change the game. You think you know what's coming, I told her softly, but trust me, you don't. Her eyes shot up, confusion written all over her face. She wasn't ready for what I had planned. The silence between us was heavy, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. She was expecting me to ask questions, maybe about when she last saw him, or if she had already betrayed me. But I didn't give her that satisfaction. Instead, I stood up slowly and walked toward the window, looking out at the backyard where we'd spent countless evenings together. You know, I said calmly, marriage isn't just about love. It's about choices. And you've made yours. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I don't want to lose you, she stammered. I just needed to be honest. Honest? I turned back to her, raising an eyebrow. Honesty isn't confessing feelings only when you're drowning in them. Honesty is choosing your partner every single day, no matter what ghosts from the past come knocking. Her lip trembled, but I wasn't done. I leaned across the table, lowering my voice. You think this is the end of the story, don't you? That you've shattered me beyond repair. But you'll see, my response is not what you think. She blinked rapidly, almost afraid. What do you mean? I just smiled again, the same unsettling smile as before. You'll find out soon enough. That night, she barely spoke. She tiptoed around the house like a stranger, afraid of what I might do or say next. But I stayed calm, almost too calm. I could see the way it unnerved her, the way she kept stealing glances at me like she was waiting for me to explode. Instead, I cooked dinner like usual, even poured her a glass of wine. She looked at the plate in front of her as if it were poisoned. Relax, I said, taking a bite of my own food. If I wanted revenge, you'd already know. Her fork clattered against the table, and I watched her chest rise and fall with nervous breaths. Why are you acting like this? Just yell at me, or something. Stop pretending you're fine. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not pretending. I am fine. You see, when you confessed, you thought you were taking control of the story. But what you don't realize, is that I've already written my ending. Her face went pale. What do you mean? I simply stood up, took my plate to the sink, and said, you'll understand soon enough. The truth was, I had already set something in motion, something she never expected. The next morning, I woke up early, earlier than her. I sat in the living room, sipping my coffee, waiting. When she finally came downstairs, she looked like she hadn't slept at all. Her eyes were red, her hair a mess. She froze when she saw me sitting there, calm as ever. "You're scaring me," she admitted, her voice shaky. I set my cup down. "Good," I said plainly. "Because fear means you finally realize the weight of your choices." She sat across from me, her hands trembling. "What are you going to do?" I leaned forward. "I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to beg. And I'm not going to fight for a place in a heart that doesn't want me." Her mouth fell open, but no words came out. "You confessed because you thought you were being noble," I continued. "But in reality, you handed me the most powerful thing I could have asked for, the truth. And now, I get to decide what happens next." Her lips quivered. "Please, don't leave me like this." I stood up slowly, looking down at her with a calm expression. "Oh, I'm not leaving. Not yet. But soon, you'll see exactly what my response really is." And with that, I walked past her, leaving her alone in the silence she had created. The day stretched on with unbearable tension. She followed me around the house, trying to start conversations, but I gave her nothing, just silence or short answers. It was driving her insane. By the afternoon, she finally snapped. "Why won't you just tell me what you're planning?" she cried, her voice echoing through the living room. I turned slowly, meeting her desperate eyes. "Because you don't deserve to know yet. You had no problem hiding feelings from me all these years. Now it's my turn to let you sit in uncertainty." Her face crumbled. "That's not fair." I laughed lightly, not out of joy, but out of disbelief. "Fair? Do you think love is fair when you confess that you want someone else? Do you think marriage is fair when one person is holding back while the other is giving everything?" She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. For the first time, I felt a strange shift. She wasn't in control anymore. She wanted answers. She wanted clarity. But I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. "Don't worry," I said softly. "The moment will come. And when it does, you'll never forget how I responded." Her tears fell harder, and I simply walked away, leaving her with the weight of her own confession. That evening, I finally made my move. She was sitting on the couch, hugging her knees, when I walked in with a small envelope in my hand. Her eyes widened instantly. "What is that?" she asked nervously. I sat down across from her and placed the envelope on the table. "Proof," I said simply. She hesitated before picking it up, her hands shaking as she slid out the papers inside. The color drained from her face the moment she saw them. "These," her voice cracked. "These are messages." I nodded. "Yes. Every single one you sent to him. Every, 'I miss you,' every late-night conversation while I was asleep, every promise you thought I'd never find." She dropped the papers, covering her mouth in shock. How did you get these?" I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. "You thought you were confessing something I didn't already know. But I've known for months. And I've been waiting for you to admit it. Now that you finally have, it's my turn to choose what happens next." Her eyes filled with terror. "Please, don't do this. I can explain." I shook my head slowly. "No. You already said enough." Her hands trembled as she tried to gather the papers from the floor. "It wasn't what it looks like," she stammered, her voice cracking. I was confused, I didn't mean to hurt you." I watched her scramble, the desperation clear in every movement. "Confused?" I repeated coldly. "You don't send months of messages to your ex because you're confused. You do it because you wanted to. Because part of you wished you were still with him." Tears streaked down her face. "But I never planned to leave you. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. That doesn't make it better. You wanted both worlds, his attention and my loyalty. But marriage doesn't work like that. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. What are you going to do with this? Show it to him? To my family? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the silence cut deeper than any words. Then finally, I said, no. I don't need to humiliate you. I don't need revenge. My response is much bigger than that. She looked up at me through teary eyes, confusion and fear battling in her expression. Bigger? What does that mean? I stood, walking toward the door. It means you'll see soon enough. And when you do, you'll wish you never said a word about loving him again. That night, she barely slept. I could hear her tossing and turning, whispering apologies into the darkness, hoping I would answer. But I stayed silent, letting her drown in the weight of her own choices. In the morning, I dressed for work like nothing had happened. She followed me to the door, her eyes swollen from crying. Please, she begged, clutching my arm. Don't leave me hanging like this. Just tell me what you're going to do. I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. Slowly, I pulled away. If you wanted certainty, you should have chosen me every day instead of keeping someone else in your heart. Her lip trembled. I made a mistake. I shook my head. No. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or leaving the oven on. What you did was a choice. And choices always have consequences. Her breath hitched as I opened the door. What consequences? She whispered. I paused, turning slightly toward her with that same unsettling calmness. You'll find out when I'm ready. Not before. And with that, I walked out, leaving her standing there in the doorway, shaking. She thought she had seen the worst of it, but my real response was still coming. The following days were torture for her, and I made sure of it. I acted polite, calm, even cheerful at times, but never gave her the clarity she desperately wanted. I could see the way it ate at her, the way she tried to read every glance, every word, searching for clues. On the third evening, she finally broke. I can't take this anymore, she shouted, her voice echoing through the kitchen. If you're going to leave me, just say it. If you're going to destroy me, just do it. But stop dragging this out. I set down my glass of water and looked at her steadily. You want me to make it easy for you. But why should I? You didn't care how much pain your words brought me when you confessed. Her hands balled into fists. So what? You're punishing me? I leaned forward slowly, my tone calm but sharp as a knife. Not punishing. Teaching. Because you thought love was something you could play with, keep a husband at home, and still keep your heart wandering elsewhere. Now you understand what it feels like when control slips through your fingers. She sank into the chair, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know who you are anymore. I smiled faintly. That's the point. You thought you knew me. But you never saw this side of me coming. And with that, I stood up and left her sitting there in stunned silence, wondering what my next move would be. The tension in the house had reached a breaking point. She jumped every time my phone buzzed, terrified it might be him, or worse, some signal that I had already made my move. One evening, I came home carrying a folder. I placed it gently on the dining table without saying a word. Her eyes widened instantly. What is that? Open it, I said, my tone calm but unshakable. With trembling hands, she slid the papers out. Her eyes scanned the first page, and the blood drained from her face. Divorce papers, she whispered. I watched her carefully. I told you I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't fight, I wouldn't beg. This is my response. Clean. Final. And nothing like what you expected. She shook her head furiously, tears streaming down her face. No, no, you can't do this. Please, I made a mistake. I don't want him, I want you. I'll block him, I'll prove it, just please don't leave me. I leaned on the back of the chair, my voice steady. You only want me now because you're afraid of losing me. But love isn't built on fear. It's built on loyalty, and you gave that away. She collapsed to the floor, clutching the papers, sobbing uncontrollably. For the first time, she realized that my silence, my calm, my unsettling patience, had been leading to this moment all along. She sat on the floor, clutching the papers as if holding them tighter might make them disappear. Please, she begged, her voice breaking. Don't do this. I'll do anything, therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I'll prove to you that you're the only one I want. I stood quietly, watching her unravel. For years, I had loved her more than anything, but now I felt strangely detached, like I was watching a play where the ending had already been written. You know what's ironic? I said finally. When you confessed, you thought it was the bravest thing you could do. But in reality, it was the easiest. The brave thing would have been to kill those feelings before they ever had a chance to grow. The brave thing would have been to protect our marriage. Her sobs grew louder. I was weak, she admitted. But I see it now. Please, don't give up on me. I bent down, lifting the folder from her hands. These papers aren't just about ending something. They're about showing you that I value myself enough not to live in someone else's shadow. You wanted honesty, well, this is mine. She reached out, grabbing my wrist, her nails digging in slightly. If you walk away, I'll never forgive myself. I looked her straight in the eyes, calm as ever. Good. Then maybe you'll finally understand what loyalty is worth. And with that, I pulled free, leaving her trembling on the floor with nothing but the echo of my words. The next morning, the house was silent. She didn't chase after me, didn't beg like the night before. When I walked into the kitchen, she was sitting at the table, her face pale, the divorce papers spread out in front of her. Her eyes lifted slowly to meet mine. For the first time, there was no defiance, no excuses, just the hollow look of someone who finally understood the cost of their choices. I lost you, she whispered, her voice breaking. I nodded. You did. Not because of your feelings, but because of what you did with them. Love isn't about what's in your heart, it's about the choices you make to protect it. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't argue. She just lowered her head, clutching the papers as if they were a sentence she had written for herself. I picked up my bag and walked to the door. Before leaving, I turned back one last time. You thought confessing would break me. But all it did was set me free. The door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a weight lift from my chest. My response wasn't anger, or revenge, or chaos, it was calm, decisive freedom. And she never saw it coming.